Good evening, everybody. Raise your hand if you can hear me. All right, excellent. If I can ask y'all for our evening session to come forward. If you're at a table in the back and you see a table in front of you, if you can move up a little closer. We want to create a more intimate environment for this, our Keynote series. And while you're coming forward, before we get started, before I introduce our keynote speaker, I want to give you all a chance to tell me what's been meaningful to you about this weekend so far. We're coming to the end. Obviously, our speaker will be with us tonight and also tomorrow in worship. Don't forget, you can come back to worship and hear him again in the morning. And we invite you. I don't know much about the pastor here, but I heard the church is okay. So you should come back and visit this church. Yeah. Some folks like him. Other folks are still verdicts out. So think about for a minute what's been something that's been impactful to you that you're gonna take with you as you leave. That's really stood out to you. That's been important to you. And would you be willing to lift it up for the rest of our group here? Who's got something they want to share that they've got? Just raise your hand and I'll come to you with the microphone. And you can share with the group something that's come up for you that's been important, impactful. Yes, right there.
I think just being in a diverse space with honesty, I've felt that we were honest, and I have not had the opportunity to be in a space where we're just honest and we're learning from each other. And so it's been very enlightening, encouraging, and wonderful.
Praise God for the truth. Honesty. Yes. That's right. Tell the truth. It's hard to do that sometimes. We don't have opportunities always. Yes.
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be here, but also I love the subline or whatever of the conference, reading the Bible through other eyes. This is something I've been on a journey to learn and learn more about, and I really appreciate what you guys have brought to the table with this conference and just the perspectives of the two speakers we had before. I'm looking forward to my cousin, Stewart, although I spell mine with a D, but but just being able to look at the Bible through others' eyes, so appreciate it.
Yeah, look at the Bible through others' eyes. We thank Dr. Parker especially for being here with us to lead that and offering two breakout sessions unexpectedly for us. Thank you so much for doing that. Who else has got something they want to share that's been particularly meaningful or impactful for them? Oh, Seth, yeah.
I appreciate how each of the speakers have challenged me, even in my own spiritual journey, questions that I've had and things I'm wrestling with as a white man, always under change and always under need of change. And I just really appreciate all the speakers, and I go to specifics. And I really appreciate being with people who are also doing the work. That is encouraging. I like being challenged, and so many spaces make it very comfortable for me to just rest in my whiteness. And I find just true spirituality to be found when confronting truth and with people who are willing to be honest with you about the truth. And so I'm just really blessed to be in this space.
Thanks, Seth. All right. Others who have something they want to share that's been meaningful or impactful that they're going to carry with them as they go forth from here. All right, Tom.
For me, just hearing from all of the other people in the small groups today, their journey, their story, and realizing I'm not the only one, that's struggling with this, and just being able to share that with each other in a place that's safe and where you can be open about it.
It's good to know we're not alone. Not alone in this journey. Yes. Others, who's got something they want to share that stood out for them? All right, Karen.
I can't really think of one specific thing, but I will share this, that just the diversity in the ages, the opinions, everything about everyone I heard, the small groups. But for me, as a member of this church and somebody on the board of this church, it made me feel very encouraged. This one is just so much better attended than the last one, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but it's making me feel good about our journey and where we're going. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was thinking about our speaker and what she had to say, and when you can feel those little synapses in your brain start to explode, and you can feel the things connections, and it gave me hope, and it gave me new ideas and new ways to go forward, and some new ideas from what we might want to do here going forward. And so I want to thank you and all of you for coming and giving me a lot of hope and making me feel better about the times that we're in and all the work we have to do. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Others, anybody else? Something they want to lift up? Bill. Yeah.
Well, I've so appreciated being here, and I've appreciated the conversations I've had with Sandra and with Ron in particular. One thing that stuck with me from last night was differentiating the faith in Christ versus the faith of Christ. And for me, that just opens up a whole bunch of questions that I need to wrestle with. And I think it also offers a pathway that I haven't found. So I really appreciate that. And then Reverend Starlette Thomas also, pardon? Yeah, hi there. I'm the quiet one in that second group, right? But I was soaking it in. And again, something that I'm going to take away is in this sequence, asking myself, where am I going? And who is going with me in that sequence? So those two things will give me lots to think about for a while.
Where are we going? Who's coming with us? Great questions. Great questions. Oh, yeah, right here.
I think one of the, there's been a lot of things for me personally throughout just this whole, I came in this morning going, oh my gosh, I want more. And then after this day, it's not that I want less, but I was like, I need space, because I was like, oh, it should last tomorrow too. And then I was like, no, I need my brain and my spirit and emotions, like all of it, to like let everything sink in. One of the things that Tara said in her session was, this is a brave space. Not a safe space, but a brave space. And so what I want to do is personally and professionally create more brave spaces where I feel braver stepping up and stepping in, so that other people feel brave as well.
That's great. Glad to hear we had that brave space here created for folks this weekend. All right, well, thank you for sharing some of that. It's been a really powerful weekend for those of us even who've planned it, just to see it come to fruition, to have all of you in this space together, learning, growing, meeting each other, building relationships. And I think it will be amazing to see what comes from the relationships and the work that we did together. As you mentioned, it's going to take days to see what really occurred here, because it's sort of like unsettling the dust, and it flies up in the air, and it will take time for the dust to settle, and it will resettle in new places, and we'll be new people. And the relationships that we made here will change the world in some way, some form or fashion, and will be different as we go forth from this place and change the world. And we have more transformation and change to take place as we move into this time of our keynote lecture series, our keynote speaker, who I'm so excited about the opportunity to introduce. Are y'all ready for our keynote lecture? All right. Let's get excited. So those of you who've been through the course and who've been around here long enough, just know that James Baldwin is the spiritual force behind the course, behind my transformation, behind my journey. And you heard Baldwin in every speaker that we've heard already, informing every speaker. And when I think about people in our world right now who are modern day embodiments of Baldwin, I can think of no one better than Reverend Dante Stewart, who I'm going to introduce right now. And I was following Dante on Twitter before I even knew he had a book coming out. And when I found out that he had a book coming out, I pre-ordered it and waited so long. By the time it came, I was so excited and ready to grab it and read it. And I just think that you all will be moved to hear Dante. And so I was so excited when we got the chance to have him here with us for this weekend. And he'll be here tonight and also preaching in worship tomorrow. Just for background, Dante Stewart is a writer, speaker, and author. Dante is an award-winning writer, speaker. He's author of the new book, I hope you already gotten the chance to purchase it, Shoutin' in the Fire, an American Epistle, which is named by the Georgia Writers Association as Georgia Writer of the Year, and by the Center for American Progress as one of 22 faith leaders to watch in 2022. And Dante's recently ordained, I realize, and so we congratulate him on his ordination. And he was named by the Religion News Service as one of the 10 up-and-coming faith influencers. His work has appeared in The Atlantic, The New York Times, The Washington Post, Time, ESPN's Anscape, Oxford American, Sojourners, NPR, CNN, Parents, and more. He is not only a student of James Baldwin, but a writer who is often compared to him. He received his BA in sociology from Clemson and is currently studying at the Candler School of Theology at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And tonight will not only be sharing from his previous book, but some new writing that he's done. Let's give it up for Dante Stewart.
Y'all all right? Okay, there we go. Hey, shout out to Brother Wes, holding it down in the back. I am incredibly thankful. That feels good right there. Yeah, I like them levels are real good, brother. I am incredibly grateful and thankful and blessed and counted a deep honor to be with y'all tonight. I am just amazed just of all the wonderful things that have already been said through the breakout and through the other personal plenary sessions, and I just want to make sure I show love to all of you and thank you for being here and engaging in such a critical topic as confronting whiteness. Shout out to the Reverend Dr. Ben Boswell. Can we give him a hand? And to all those who have made this event possible, to everybody who has served, to everybody who has shared this event, to everybody who showed up, who told somebody, who brought somebody, who loved somebody, who did anything that somebody else can be helped along the way. I want to share something with y'all tonight. Tomorrow, I'm going to leave the preaching for tomorrow. But I am tonight going to be Dante Stewart, the writer. I was actually working through my therapist on this, so I'm going to share this with you. Last year has been a very hard year for me. It ended extremely hard. I was dealing with panic attacks a lot. I have anxiety disorder, so I actually was in Nashville last year and actually had a panic attack while I was doing an event with a writer. So I need y'all to help me. Is that okay? Can y'all help me out tonight? All right, cool. So anybody LeVar Burton fans? Okay, we got some LeVar Burton fans. All right, so my claim to fame is that last year, I think it was last year or 2021, I wrote an article, right? And LeVar Burton showed up on my Twitter. And LeVar Burton was like, "You are a powerful writer, grounded in truth." And y'all, when I tell y'all, I about lost it. I love my wife. I love my wife deeply. And my wife gives me butterflies, but LeVar Burton almost made me fall out. And so if you're fans of LeVar Burton and you're fans of his podcast, he has an incredible podcast that just came back entitled LeVar Burton Reads. And at the beginning of each podcast, LeVar Burton does a very deep centering, grounding, and meditative practice of breathing in and breathing out before he reads a piece of literature. So in this moment, we're going to learn from the great Reverend Dr. Immaculate LeVar Burton, the wonderful LeVar Burton, and breathe in for a second and breathe out, and we're going to center ourselves. So breathe in, breathe out. One more time, breathe in, breathe out, and I'm going to read. My talk tonight is mostly reading because I think there's something powerful about words. I believe that words can change the world. You know, the world was created through words and sustained through words. The greatest of us have connected through language. Hello, mama, dada. When we die, there are words that's spoken over us, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. When our lives are over and our friends remember us, some of us say, may their memory be a blessing. And so tonight, what I have chosen to do is think deeply about this idea of confronting whiteness. And as I was preparing for this particular talk, I've really been thinking about what whiteness takes away from us and what we refuse to allow it to rob us of. And so my mind immediately goes to a story. There is a memory I will never forget. It sits in my body like a nightmare. It crept from my feet up to my stomach and into my mind as I heard the cries of a young, beautiful black boy from Memphis, Tennessee. The memory emerges again as my eyes behold Ahmaud Arbery's face and that of his mother, Wanda Cooper Jones. As I remember the cry of George Floyd as he said, "Mama." It pierces my ears as I hear the words of Ahmaud's father, Marcus Arbery, as he describes what he has seen in the courtroom as, quote unquote, devastating. It sits in my mouth bitterly as I have seen Travis McMichael and Gregory McMichael and William Bryan as they sat in the courtroom those years ago, watched by all of us. And it still sits in my mouth bitterly as I hear the words of those police officers as they snuffed the life of Tyree Nichols. His mother said her baby boy was just that, her baby boy. Then his father wondered why anybody would treat his son as if he's not a human. And then my father called me just minutes before this moment, this very moment, and says that he wants to hear the voice of his son. It is June 2008. I'm barely 16. In the heat of the South Carolina summer, just 2 weeks after my body went down in and back up out of the baptismal pool, the white garment sticking to my body like swimming trunks, I am traveling on the back road with my sister, my two brothers, and a cousin. As my 25-year-old brother DePaul drives our mother's car, we bob our heads to Tupac and then to Bone Thugs and then to Outkast and then to Missy Elliott. We are on our way to my aunt's house to celebrate another cousin's graduation. We hear a clank in the car, a rumble, a puzzling noise. DePaul stops on the shoulder of the road, which is barely a shoulder of the road because we're in rural South Carolina. To our right, it is an old trailer home with a garden next to it. I look at it and it is beautifully southern. I'm sitting in the back seat playing with my seatbelt. An old white man comes out of the house and stands on the porch about 30 feet away. He starts yelling something at us. Apparently, he thinks we've thrown some trash in his yard. The yells are chilling. They are the yells of someone who I have learned wants to actually ruin us. I see his eyes. They are dark, piercing. He sees us, but he refuses to see us. He does not see the playfulness or the youthfulness or the Bible that rests underneath the passenger seat. He only sees a threat. You'll be here when I get back, the old man yells, and he rushes into his house. I don't give a damn about you. My brother DePaul yells back. I see rage take over my brother's body. I see that he is willing to stand for us and, if need be, die for us as well. But more than that, he wants to protect us. So he runs. He runs back to the car, jumps into the seat, and speeds off. The anxiety. Was it anxiety? No. The terror takes over my body. When suddenly, bang, bang, bang. He shot at us. My brother, my sister, my cousin, children. We made it home that day, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. My body wouldn't stop shaking. I learned at church that baptism saves us from ourselves and what the preacher would say, the wrath of God. But in that moment, it did not save our bodies from the wrath of man. No amount of prayers could save it. No amount of Sunday morning lessons or math problems or names on the back of orange jerseys or degrees from academic institutions could save our bodies from what we would call American hatred. You know something? This was 53 years after Emmett Till's mutilated body appeared in the pages of Jet magazine for the world to see. It was 4 years before the news of Trayvon shot by George Zimmerman. It was 6 years before we would stare at the lifeless body of Mike Brown as he lay face down on the hot Ferguson, Missouri concrete for 4 hours. It was 8 years before my eyes burned in anguish as I and so many saw the executions of Alton Sterling. Alton. Then Philando. And then the responses rolled in. Jesus doesn't see color, one of the members of my church replied. Jesus sees us all the same, said another. Funny thing is, not too long ago, I too believed it. I believe that Jesus didn't see color, and I believe that Christians shouldn't see color either. So when the members wrote on my post, I didn't know how to respond. I had no idea how to make them feel what I felt inside of me. I didn't want to cause drama, I guess. And so I said, I agree. Jesus doesn't see color. The gospel unites and makes us one. When Alton was murdered and Philando was murdered, Donald Trump had just began his campaign. Well, really not just began, but actually began to settle in on the hearts of white members at the church that we were at. I had gotten used to hearing bluegrass worship songs. Shout out to white Christians. Talking sports. Hold on. Talking sports with men in khaki shorts and polos. Talking about the latest book by the Reformed pastor. The sermons were short. Every Sunday was filled with pastors dropping quotes from old dead white guys and living white guys in white churches, talking about white schools and writing white books. The week after Alton was murdered, I remember our sermon series began to explore marriage. Week after week, we heard about what God wanted us to do in our singleness, so the pastor said, and what God wanted us to reflect in our marriages, so the pastor said, and the grace of God for our sins and the forgiveness of God for our failures, so the pastor said. Not once during any of those Sundays or any Sunday after that did the pastor say anything about Alton or Philando. Never did the sins named include a country that did not know God but did know violence. None of it mentioned what we were going through. We were taught week in and week out how to be Christian, but we were not taught how to live in America. My grandmother called me after the Buffalo shooting, but I missed it. I called her back, creasing the pages of my small black journal, hoping somehow to catch a word of passing wisdom as she spoke, but she did not pick up. In a flash, my mind went to the images of the black elders who were murdered at the grocery store. I saved them on my computer, and now they are staring back at me. When the shooter entered the store in one of the blackest neighborhoods in Buffalo, intent on carrying out his racist plot, I wonder if he ever considered that death does not just rob us of life, but it robs us also of peace. Did he ever consider that the people he killed, those who hid, and those who watched him be apprehended as if he just said a bad word rather than carried out a lynching, would feel this grief as an expression of years of terrorism that sits in our body? Of course, the answer is no. I guess I'm still in disbelief. I am caught between asking questions that make me feel like a ticking time bomb of rage and finding relief of things that have been making me feel somewhat alive, looking for answers in books, talking to friends about what we already know about racism, hugging my wife, kissing my kids, hugging them again, going back to books, reading again, going on a walk and then going work out, and then I'm crying again as I just saw another black person being murdered. These days, as Baldwin called dark days, I stare at my computer, grasping for answers, crying with friends, and praying that my wife and my children will be safe. And I guess the word is this, that the presence of a hug is worth more than the bullet of a gun. For the last few years, I've made a practice of remembering the names of murdered black people who deserve to be remembered. I guess there's something spiritual about this practice. Maybe, I wonder to myself, if I physically write down their names, then I could somehow drive out the numbness that I feel over the continued loss that sits in my stomach. Just 2 years ago, I wrote down the names of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. Just 2 years ago, I put 3 black hearts beside their names and outlined the letters in clouds. Just 2 years ago, I called my grandma and asked how she felt. I wondered if those names were as present and as painful as Emmett Till for her, and if their murder sat in her 89-year-old body, making her feel as tired as I felt. We've been in a rut, Grandma told me then. We've been in a rut. I asked her if she ever thought about running, moving up north like her brother Simbo did in the 1960s after he slapped the taste out of a white man's mouth, laughing his way to Baltimore. I asked her if her and Granddaddy ever dreamed of some other place but here. I was born. I'm going to live, and I'm going to die in the South, she said. I laughed. Because I ain't never heard Grandma say, I was born, I'm going to live, and I'm going to die like that. And there I am years later calling her again, devastated that we are still adding names to the list. I tell her that I'm sorry that she, as a Southern black woman, has had to give the country her best while she endures the worst. And I say I'm sorry that Uncle Sambo is dead and that Granddaddy is dead and that she has had to hear about those who look like her being murdered during a quick run to the store. I say that I'm sorry that she still lives in a country where some believe that white people deserve the best things on earth while black people like her have to wait for them in heaven. That low-down boy, she said, went and killed all them black people, gritting her teeth. And if I can be completely honest, we have died at so much and at such a staggering rate that it has almost become normal. Between the violence and the racism and COVID-19, I've almost run out of tears and words that feel like they do justice to these tragedies. It is easy to forget that I only experienced their pain vicariously, and that we all experience suffering vicariously when moments happen like this. And when the Bible says mourn with those who mourn, it doesn't take into account that distance can do something to those feelings, and that being overwhelmed by the news of another person being murdered can actually make it hard to cry. Yet, I have forced myself to write their names Ruth Whitfield, Aaron Salter Jr., Pearlie Young, Roberta Drury, Celestine Cheney, Hayward Patterson, Andre McNeil, Catherine Cat Massey, Geraldine Chapman Talley, Margus Morrison. I write their names and whisper to myself, I don't want to forget them. And then under their names, I guess I have written a eulogy. You have deserved more. You didn't deserve hatred. You didn't deserve terror. You deserve to be here. I love you. We love you so much. You deserve more. And I close my journal. In the essay Dark Days, James Baldwin writes that to be black was to confront and to be forced to confront a condition forged in history. The condition that he refers to in this reading is white supremacy, which hasn't died with time in the passing generations, so as so many would have us to believe. It is inherited and transferred like a prized possession that only yields destruction and erasure. Sadly, the ones who must pay the ultimate price are not those who created the world that benefits whiteness and claims divinity upon itself and damnation upon others, but those like me and my wife and my children and my parents and my grandparents and other mamas and other daddies and other cousins, all who have dreamed of breath amid the chokehold of racism that wants to snuff it out. Have you not considered this truth? That before someone ever kills a person with their hands, they have already killed them in their minds and in their hearts. If you have been convinced that another person's freedom means your oppression, then you will do whatever you must do to control them and destroy their existence. Let's be clear. White terrorism and white supremacy, even if it is on the badge of a black brother with a nice haircut, with a taser in his hand, is still the greatest threat to black life and all who want to experience democracy. It seems that history tells the story of its insatiable desire on our suffering. And I guess what is most enraging is this, is that they are allowed to do it while they stand behind pulpits, while they sit in stands at ball games, while they sit behind computers typing away. Even when they put forward legislation and weather words on the side of their cars, quote unquote, to protect and serve, they do it without ever considering how their ignorance and their hatred has become a death sentence. We know, James Baldwin writes, how utterly improbable it is, indeed miraculous, that we can still have a drink or a pork chop or even laugh together. We were wanderers from the beginning, suggests the late great astrophysicist Carl Sagan in his book, Pale Blue Dot. We, the human people, from time before to now, have walked this earth with a kind of curiosity and an openness. The gardens were tilled until the first plant burst through the ground. Out of wood, we made both a weapon and an object of worship. Up to the sky, little eyes sparkled with an infatuation with the wideness of this thing we call home. 5 times in that text, at the beginning, he mentions the word we. We knew, we followed, we rejoiced, we depended. A magnificent change of words, I suppose. I suspect that Carl Sagan, with his fascination with the world out there, was as much, if not more, fascinated by the world right here. The year has begun with resolutions for me that have ranged anywhere from to write more, to be present more, to be kind to myself. You know, the things that make you feel like you're growing and you're going. Then there are those resolutions that move toward the word we. I have wanted to listen to others more. I have wanted to invite others into my own life. I have wanted to give others spiritual wisdom and things that help us day in and day out. And also, this is a very big one. I have wanted to return back to sharing space and story together with others. I mean, that very intimate telling and retelling of what has happened to us, how we went through it, and most of all, what it has taught us. Something akin to the testimony service of my Black Pentecostal church, of my youth. People would enter the sacred space together, stand up, sometimes cry, sometimes shout, sometimes whisper about the hell that they have been through. For the nation, I guess it would be something akin to a national day of mourning, saying the names of the victims, telling their stories, painting the fullest picture of their life that we possibly can. I guess for some reason I need stories right now. It is the oxygen that carries my broken heart, that keeps that broken heart beating. And truthfully, I think each one of us sitting here today need those stories. Something of a little bit of honesty, something of a little bit of humility, and something of a little hope. And I have wondered this question this year. What do we have to live for, if not for the possibility that somebody would be waiting on us at the end, actually wanting to know and love our story? They didn't just beat Tyree Nichols. They lynched him. It was a police lynching. They wanted to kill him. And all he could do was run for his life, cry for his mama, and cry for himself. It makes me want to cry, my daddy tells me before I walk into this building. The cries, he says, was the most heartbreaking. He was beat, dying, alone, unable to save himself. I've made a practice, as when I wrote my book, that I would close my eyes and hear the sounds of the videos, as I did with Alton, as I did with Philando. And when I heard the cries of Tyree Nichols, one thing was clear. This was American voyeurism. He said, I'm just trying to get home. He cried for his mama. He should have made it home. And we know how much black life doesn't matter, because we know how much they don't care whether we cry or if we're gifted or if we make it home. They do not care. And as I looked at him, being 1 year older than Tyree, I've thought about my own child, my son. And I've wanted to tell him this: black people should not have to be perfect to stay alive, to be seen, to be loved, to be protected. We need not prove the humanity of Tyree or us. He doesn't have to do that. He is human enough. He can run when he is afraid. He can skateboard when he needs some respite. He can call out to mama without dying. But sadly, that is not the case. He is dead. We are alive. Running, once again, should not be a death sentence. Some of us live. Some of us die. And what remains is how we remember and show up and fight to make sure that we are free, and that justice, if it is not a present experience, will become our children's inheritance. For whatever they inherit will be as much about what we hold in our bodies as what we hold in our minds and our stomachs and in our hands and in our hearts. For they will hold what we have all held, memories of terror, and stories of the ways in which some of us have pushed back against a world that wants to kill us. We don't just remember the death. We remember the life, the beauty, the art, the feeling, the waiting, the living. We remember it all. It is so much more than trauma porn to look at another human being and recognize their humanity. It is, as the wonderful, amazing, beautiful scholar Dr. Courtney Baker out of California says, humane insight. It is humane insight. The refusal to allow our eyes to be blinded to the humanity of another. Others may not see me or others who look like me as we see ourselves. And we do not all live at their mercy. We hold grief, yes. We hold terror, yes. But we also know the love that refuses to let this racist world have every part of us. And it is our job, the job of every human being, to hold it, to love it, to protect it, and to honor it so that it doesn't grow cold under the weight of this world. And whatever part that is in your hand, in your mind, on your lips, do what you must do to protect it. Do whatever you must do to feel again, to remember the dead, to fight for the living, to not let your suffering or their own be in vain. And when the moment presents itself, and I believe it will, remember that healing and liberation is as much about resting and being free and being ordinary and being together as it is about resisting. They were trying to be whole. The good brother James Baldwin concludes that essay, Dark Days. And so are we. God help us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Whew, y'all better make me emotional now. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. God bless you. I think we're going to open it up for Q&A. I ain't gonna lie, I really get my anxiety gets very heightened in Q&A. So if you would help me out, like say what you're gonna say, but say your question. Because when you ponder on your joint, that it kind of I get real introspective. Just as a word of caution, that I've noticed during Q&A times, I get very because I can control this, so there's a part of Q&A I can't control. So just be mindful a little bit for me. Thank you, I appreciate you. Y'all can ask y'all questions now. I ain't saying don't not ask questions, but just help your boy out.
Am I on? Ooh, I'm on now. Dante, I realized when I glanced at my watch that I had been motionless outside of blinking and breathing for 18 straight minutes. That does not happen to me. So I have now created an Instagram post with your picture where I have named you as a prophet whose words are powerful and need to be heard.
Thank you. God bless you. Bless you. Bless you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you. God bless you. Bless you.
Bob?
Oh, yeah, okay. That was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So my question has to do with the videos of the killing. I have not watched them yet. I'm trying to get the courage to do so, but You referred to the video as American voyeurism.
Yes.
Talk to us some more about these videos.
Yeah.
And, how we approach watching them. There's something sacred about the life, and how do we do that with proper respect?
Can I move this? This feels a little bit better for me to move this and kind of chill out a little bit. Thank you. Also, I've been standing for a little minute, so thank you. Appreciate it. You caught that. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so just talk a little bit about the videos and how we properly
So first of all, I don't think there's any way to actually properly talk about the videos. You feel me? Some of us are going to feel as if we should not watch the videos. And I want to, for people who feel that way, I personally want to say I feel you. One should not subject, yourself to re-traumatization. I don't think, I partly felt it was weird the way that this video was promoted. And I'm not the first person to say this. Others have shared on social media and in media about the way that this felt different. That there was a sort of the weird anticipation that they forced us collectively into in the public execution of a human being. And one could suggest that, and I would suggest this too, that they only did that because the officers was black, so they felt a sort of type of distance or implication in that, so they wanted to distance themselves. So, that's one way to read that. And I feel it, I feel it. I don't know when the last time I've seen a white officer who murdered anybody, white, black, whoever. I have never seen, I just don't remember in recent memory, where a white officer who harmed another human being, which led to death, or tased another human being, or shot him, or whatever, abused another human being, where their face was plastered all on media with such speed, and clarity as this case. We didn't, them brothers, you saw their haircuts and all, you saw everything, with them. And so, for me, if people want to not, watch those videos, they should not watch those videos. But for me, I am a reader of Courtney Baker, and I've read her book, Humane Insight. And there's something powerful about that book that, for me, personally, this is a personal thing, I have become incredibly numb to all of it. And I don't think I need a video to feel again, per se. But there is something for me about the cries of another human being that allows me to tap into something else that I did not have. I don't think that one needs that to do that. But for me, a part of me does it. I don't need it, but a part of me does it because I don't want them to be alone. He died alone. He cried alone. He was beat alone. Maybe in some spiritual, mystical way. I don't know. He just doesn't have to be alone. When I was writing my book and writing the chapter Terror, where I covered, it was either Terror Rage, or I covered Alton Sterling's death, I needed to listen to the recording so I could paint the fullest possible picture of the ways white supremacy harms us. And even as I'm working on a piece right now about this situation, I want to paint the fullest possible picture of the ways white supremacy harmed us and harmed him. But it also allows me to paint the fullest possible picture I can of his life, to take everything that they did to him as best I can. So Dante Stewart chooses to watch the video for various reasons. I don't know why, but this is a personal choice, and it does something to my soul that keeps me in tune with my humanity. It keeps me feeling. I never want to get to a place where I cannot cry over another human being. Do I need a video to do that? No. But does listening to him cry for his mother, like, make me want to cry for him? Yes. I never would tell a person they must watch a video. Nor will I tell them that they have to stay away. You just got to do what's best for you and be prepared for the fallout, whatever, and deal with it the way you need to deal with it and do something about it. Whether you watch or whether you don't do nothing, you know. So that's the best way I can answer that, you know.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
I haven't seen it, and I'm not sure I'm going to see it, but today I had to work, and I was driving a lot, and they were playing it on the radio, so I listened to it.
Oh, facts.
And the initial abduction was harder to listen to than the later stuff because of how scared he was and how confused he was. He was saying, y'all are really doing a lot. At first he was like, he couldn't believe what was happening. And just if you haven't looked at it, or just maybe try listening to it, because you hear in his voice things that maybe when you watch it you miss because you're watching the atrocity. But if you just hear his voice, and when he starts saying, I just want to go home, and calling for his mother, it moved me to tears. And it's just a shame we have to live through this over and over again.
That's real. That's facts. You know, it's kind of crazy to me. Like, I was talking to my daddy before I got here, and like, I was like, dang, Dad, like my pops, mid-60s. Like, dang, bro, like, bro, you really, like, remember Rodney King, and then George Floyd, Amadou Diallo. You remember all these people who got murdered, you know, like, who got hurt, who got beat, who got abused. It's like, what does that do to you? Like, I had literally asked my daddy, like, this was my first time ever, like, asking my daddy, you know, that. It's like, what does it do to you, man? And my daddy said it makes me want to cry, you know? My daddy ain't no emotional person. You know, he's of that generation that, like, I don't even think my daddy cried at his wedding, you know. You know, I don't even know if he cried at our birth. He's just one of them type of people, you know. But to hear my daddy talk about how emotional it made him, and the fact that, like, my daddy has called me so much over these last few days. Like, even if he ain't telling me, like, yo, like, I want to hear you, I want to talk to you, like, my daddy telling me, like, yo, like, I need to hear you, I want to talk to you. And it is sad, you know, I don't think nobody should ever be, I don't think any human being or any human community, you know, should be forced to endure what black people have endured. And I think we need to name that. Like, nobody should be forced to endure what black people have endured. It's not fair. And other communities are going through it as well and have gone through it. It's not fair for human beings to go through that. It's just not fair.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I've gone through a range of emotions since I've been here last night. And first I want to say, Dante, that I have generalized anxiety.
Same.
So I totally relate to your experiences, okay?
Thank you.
And I believe that is from God, and I believe that he's using that toward his purposes.
Thanks.
So I wanted to encourage you with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay?
Bless you. Bless you. Bless you.
The other thing I wanted to say is that about the feelings is it's really difficult to try to make sense of all that we are experiencing over and over again with the racial stuff. But I do want to say that I shared today in a group that when I was born in this country, segregation was the law of the land. It was legalized segregation. So before I started school, that was the law. So I went to segregated schools because it was the law. And, you know, the different water fountains and, you know the history about that. In my generation, it's not that long ago. And while I can see and say that there's been progress, there is still, we still have a long way to go, yes, but we also may be taking some steps backwards. I went to a high school under what was called freedom of choice, when the federal government had decided that if you want to have federal money, you're going to have to desegregate these schools. So, of course, the white citizens were not going to send their kids to the schools that were not up to par. So some of the parents in the county wanted, you know, obviously the black parents wanted their kids to have better opportunity. So I was one of those students who chose to go to this predominantly white school. And it was really hell for 3 years. It was a lot of racial, you know, slurs, and I mean, you know, it was really difficult. I did get sick. It was related to the stress. And the first year, when you mentioned the gunshot, someone shot in our house. I was 15 years old. Someone came by at night, presumably KKK, and they shot in our front door with shotguns. And if you can imagine, I really can't even recall what kind of fear or what kind of feelings I actually had, because I don't know if it was numbness, but as I think back on it, you know, my parents and I, we were resolute. I mean, I just got up the next day and got on the school bus, went back to the school. Of course, no one was ever arrested or charged or even talked about the situation. Some people had their homes had crosses burned into their yards. The people wanted us to get out of the schools. It was terror. I made it through high school, but there were other, you know, injustices in the professional world, including the military. I was a military officer, and the same kind of stuff went on, but it was a lot more sophisticated, but it happened. And so I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say, but just that something tonight triggered these thoughts and experiences. And I want to say that blacks and whites have trauma that has not been addressed. And this is re-traumatization. You mentioned it, Dante. That's why I haven't looked at the film. It's re-trauma, the film from last night. And I may or I may not, but I don't need that to experience the trauma. I see it in the city, on the news, in Charlotte, every single day there are gunshots, people dying from gunshots. All races. It's trauma. It's nonsense. You know, it's all across the country, and it's over, you know, hey, I'm traumatized by what I see in Ukraine. There are lives that this is a lack of concern for humanity. You know, and I'm traumatized by that. It's more trauma. So I think that if I can make one suggestion, Bob, is that we talk about this trauma in a future conference or maybe in some of the classes that's experienced by blacks and whites. And I know that, I fear that that may be some of the reason that people don't want to talk about it. It's painful. And so thank you for your delivery tonight, and for just encouraging us.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Let me say something about trauma and our collective trauma. Me and my therapist actually been working through cognitive behavior therapy right now. So we're in that part of therapy where we're working through CBT. And my homework over these last 2 weeks have been to look at cognitive distortions. And one of the cognitive distortions is, I think it's like avoidance or something like that. You know, this kind of, or like all or nothing thinking, and things like that. Or even catastrophizing something. And I think we as human beings in America, based on our history, both collectively, I mean, Native Americans, you know, those who are immigrants, those who are Hispanic, any person who has come from a community whereby their humanity was devalued or destroyed or exploited in any capacity of the word. It has done something to us psychologically, you know, physiologically. And I think that, you know, racism and white supremacy and the ways it harms us is as much a psychological problem as it is, you know, a socio-political problem. And I think that I really do. I think white people need to think about racism and white supremacy through those lenses as well. You know, through structural change, through reparations, through all those things. But then they're like white people, there's something about whiteness that has robbed white people of their humanity. And white people need to do their work to get it back. You know, it doesn't make much sense. It doesn't make much sense to black out a screen when you continue to black out your mind. Like, it doesn't make much sense to like hashtag BLM, you know, when you ain't gonna sit in therapy and work through like what your granddaddy was, what your mama was, what your daddy was. Because guess what? When I was in white church, and the white church I was in, I made those white people comfortable. They said things to me that like white people say around other white people. And that's different. Like, y'all, I don't know what that's like, because I still was like some semblance of black. But I remember like things that they said to me. I can only imagine what they said around themselves, and that does something to people. Like inaction and avoidance does something to people. You know, it does something, and something has been done to white people in this country. And this country is doing everything to protect you from dealing with it. Changing your curriculum, killing you along with us, like criminalizing you as well, like giving you incentive not to deal with it, you know, so they're giving you resources, they're giving you access to not have to deal with it. And I think, you know, man, we black folk ain't the only one who need therapy. Like, we shouldn't be the only one that be, oh, you know, white people, let's pay for black people to get therapy. You know, let's pay for black people to get it. No, pay for white people to get it. I'm dead serious. Like, y'all white folk need to do therapy about racism and white supremacy and personalize that thing. Like, why should I have to personalize my anxiety disorder and my panic disorder because of what has happened to me, but white people don't want to personalize what happened to them or what didn't happen? Like, that is real, legitimate spiritual soul work. It's to deal with whatever, in what capacity, has robbed us of love and empathy and compassion to other human beings. So, y'all should sign up for therapy too.
Dante, I'm like Carrie, just sitting in the presence of a prophet and totally transfixed. You just took every word away from me. I'm curious, Ben mentioned in his introduction that you had just recently been ordained. And this is kind of going off track here, but
it's fine.
I'm just dying of curiosity.
It's okay.
What is that?
Y'all can ask anything, trust me. It doesn't
what was the personal meaning of, what has been the personal meaning of
Lord.
ordination for you? Because I know you're
Jesus.
ordained, you're anointed.
Oh, God.
But talk about that
man.
for us.
Oh, man. Oh, man. There's an image, there's a picture that I keep on me, on my person. Two pictures, actually. One, I'm 16, the other one, I'm a younger kid. And the image, the picture is me as a youngin'. I've got an oversized brown suit on. Obviously, I'm at church. It's at my old Pentecostal church, and the saints are doing their thing, and I'm over here like air guitaring and things like that in front of the church. This young Pentecostal kid who is like quirky and creative and just audacious, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, you know, I'm a church boy. Like I was the young kid. You know, if we play in church, I'm the preacher. You know, people want to pray. I gotta pray. You know, and things like that. And even as even in high school, I was actually back at my high school, and my old teacher was like, you know, you was always like anointed, like Miss King. And shout out to Miss King. I love Miss King to death. You know, they just always recognized in me like a sort of like anointing or whatnot. But then also, there have been so many times in my life where the affirmation of who I was, you know, was robbed because of the context I was in. You know, and then, you know, it's like, you know, in order for me to fit in or fit some type of mold, you know, I gave up, you know, that identity or that reality that I knew was like true for me for a while. I'll never forget this. I'll never forget this. When I was in white church and preaching, teaching, and leading, I'll never forget one of the last sermons that I preached. I think it was God or Disqualified, something like that, out of Isaiah. One of the last sermons that I preached, and it was like that was like my exit sermon. I was like throwing blows in that sermon. Or whatnot. I was off the rails in the sense of, in the best way possible, inside of a conservative white church. And I kind of knew it was kind of like my last sermon I was going to preach there. And it was years had went by since I had preached. You know, years that went by since I had preached. I kind of, you know, when I left the white church, I was like wandering in the wilderness, you know, as a family, and trying to figure out where we wanted to be. And I knew I wanted to go back to the black church, and knew that I wanted to be back home, you know, in that sense. You know, I wanted to go home back to the black church. And the church that I'm at now, that I'm pastoring at now, Tabernacle Baptist Church, you know, the pastor I was going through, and I just hit him up on Facebook, like, yo, bro, like, man, I'm going through, I'm like basically crying, like, oh my God, like I'm going through it right now, bro. I need you to, you know, let's go to lunch or something like that, because I just need a friend. He took me out to lunch. We went to lunch. And I'll never forget, I had to go to California because my wife and I were stationed. There was a revival service that happened in 2019. A revival service that happened in March of 2019. March of 2019, Reverend Arthur C. Jackson is preaching. He's preaching about the oil that flows from the, he was preaching about the oil, the story of the woman with the oil. I'll never forget Reverend Arthur C. Jackson preaching. I don't know anybody at this church. We're just now visiting and things like that. I'm this kid that's like, oh, I'm growing, I'm changing, and I left the church. I'm doing all this learning. I'm this Pentecostal kid that, like, you know, I know like God got something for me, you know, to do. I don't know what that is, so I'm working at the coffee shop. I was a teacher, got my job replaced from there, you know, and things like that. And then after service had went down. It was talking about the oil and picking the oil back up again. I walked down, service got over. I walked down to the bottom of the service, to the bottom of the church, to where the offices were, and this sister stopped me. The sister stopped me, right? She stopped me. I'll never forget it. The sister stopped me. She put her hand on me, on my shoulder, and she says, I don't know who you are. I don't know anything about you, but you're going to be the next preacher at Tabernacle Baptist Church. That was March of 2019. We get stationed in California. We get stationed back in California. And we got there, I think, in August. We got there in August. And just as we were going back, about to get stationed back over here in Augusta, I'm leaving the gym. I get a call from the pastor. He's like, you know, what you doing? I was like, I'm chilling. I'm leaving the gym, you know, and things like that. Just got a little workout in, working on this devotional or whatnot. I'm all good. He says, you know, y'all coming back? You know, I said, we coming back. He was like, let me take you out to lunch again when you get back, you know. All right, cool. You know, all right, take me out to lunch. So he called me back. He says, y'all coming back, right? I said, we coming back? Yeah, we coming back. And he tells me, he was like, God laid it on my heart. I don't know why, but God laid it on my heart to ask you to be the next campus pastor for our new campus. I get back station, we get back stationed here, and I come on staff on 2020. The pandemic happened, the campus does not happen. The pandemic happened, the campus doesn't happen. I'm serving the church, writing, doing my thing, you know, and then in December of 2020, I think that was December, it might have been December of 2021. I think it was 2021. December of 2021, I think. Yeah, because I was coming back from somewhere. December of 2021, I got asked to preach my first sermon at the church. And the moment was surreal. To stand in the pulpit of people of the church that the white pastor at the previous church that I was attending and serving at said that was not a solid church. To stand in that very pulpit where a sister years earlier put her hand on my shoulder and told me, you're going to be the next preacher. To remember the people from back home who told me there was something special and anointed about your life, and to stand before that congregation and to say it's good to be here meant the world to me. So that's what it means to me. I promise you I'm not going to be that long-winded tomorrow in telling the story, but I had to give some context.
Dante, you mentioned about your dad watching the movie. Your dad and I are probably the same age.
Mm-hmm.
When George was dying, he called for his mama.
Mm-hmm.
And I may get emotional. When this baby was dying, he called for his mama.
Mm.
That's what I'm afraid to hear.
Mm.
That's what I'm afraid to hear. Can't watch it tonight. I don't know when I'll be able to watch it. But right now, I'm not in a place that I could handle it. When you call the names of the brothers and sisters that have been killed, I'm thinking of brothers and sisters in my lifetime that didn't make the 6 o'clock news, didn't make the news, but died in the community. People that I knew, young men that I played with. So it's more than just watching it on video. It's reliving it again. And as a middle-aged black man, middle-aged 60 black man, I'm also afraid of the rage that it's going to create. Because when George, I experienced a level of rage that I had not experienced. And I didn't know what to do with it. It scared me. So with this, with Tyree, I'm afraid. Can you help me with that?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say you deserve to feel what you feel. You know, whatever range of emotion that is, you deserve to feel what you feel. And I just want to say I feel you, bro. You know, I feel you. I feel intense rage too. And I think, you know, I do believe our rage keep us in tap with our humanity. Like, I'm not of the perspective that rage is a bad thing. I think rage is a good thing. I think rage is a theological thing. I would even posit that rage is a biblical thing. Can I go to the Bible? Can I go to the text real quick? There's a section in my book where I write about Nehemiah, chapter 5, where Nehemiah goes back to his own people and he sees the condition of his people. He has this power and privilege, and I would even suggest that he's not necessarily power and privileged. He's still a servant of the empire, so he's not necessarily power and privilege in that perspective. But he doesn't allow the distance from his people physically create a chasm in his heart that distance his people emotionally. So whenever the word comes to him of what's going on, Nehemiah's like, I got to get up out of here, bro. This ain't the place I belong. I belong around my people. So he goes on this journey. And at every point in the journey, there is always resistance and backlash from people who want to distract, destroy, and dehumanize the work. The work being liberating people from the bondage, social, political, spiritual, emotional, psychological bondage, whereby they are living in based on the actions of other people. Then Nehemiah in chapter 5 looks upon this and determines in his heart that he's going to say something. But before he ever goes into prayer and say that I'm going to say something to people about what's happening, what Nehemiah first says is that I looked and I was angry. So his first response was not forgiveness. His first response was fierce anger. His first response was impatience with society. His first response was to protest injustice of his people. His first response wasn't to go even to God in prayer, but to feel something inside of his heart about what was going on. And if we can't feel it in our heart, then I don't think we can actually live it in our lives. And I think one of the keys that Christians are missing is that we Christians are very biblical, quote unquote, but we're not angry enough. We Christians want to preach about the gospel, but we ain't angry. Why? Why are we not angry? Because we know how white people do when they get angry. Let's take it there real quick. We know what anger is in this world on a political level. It's just that we have read anger through what white people have done in history. When these people say they don't want protesters going out and doing something, when they say y'all be calm and things like that, they ain't talking about what we actually have done in history. They're judging us based on what they know they have done in history, and they don't want us to become what they have become. So they get all these tanks, they get all these bullets, they get all these batons, they get all this tear gas because they don't want people to deal with them the way they have forced other people to be dealt with in history. I don't think it's fair or right or moral or theological. I think we deserve to be angry. And I don't think that white people are actually going to change until they actually experience what they did to other people. I just don't think that's the case. That might hurt your feelings. I'm sorry. I'll be gone tomorrow. But the fact of the matter is this. There is a reason why Germany did not repeat the Holocaust. They got hung for it in Nuremberg. I ain't suggesting people get hung, but history proved that there was a reason why they did not repeat that sin. They actually learned about it. They taught their children about it. They were held accountable for it, and they refused to repeat it. Hear me clearly. I ain't suggesting we do Nuremberg again, nor am I putting a moral judgment on what happened. I'm just saying, history shows that they did not repeat it again because they experienced accountability based on what they did. And I just don't think that people in this society going to change until I, as a man, feel what it feels to be like a woman in some sense. Until I'm held accountable, I won't change. Until I hear the story and are held accountable for the way LGBTQ persons are treated in this world, I'm not going to change. Until there are systems put in place to guide my morality. Because Martin Luther King made that philosophical argument based on Augustine's logic in Letter from a Birmingham Jail about law and morality. You can't make a person like not lynch me. But you can make it a fact that it's illegal to lynch me. And until we put some safeguards, some political safeguards in place, until people are held accountable to feel the actual actions and what needs to be held accountable for their sins, until that happens, people ain't gonna change. Like, why we gotta like march again and have this for Tyree Nichols? Why? Like, y'all, like literally, why? Like, when is enough enough? Legit. Like, get black people on the police. Well, that didn't change nothing. Get them body cameras. It's like, dang, bro, them boys acting like actors now. Get a camera, them boys think they running the script. Have community policing. Have them like go outside and play basketball and run routes with black kids. Next thing you know, they shot and killed them. And nothing changed. You got some dead, talented black dudes on the street. Terrorized poor communities, and we ain't done nothing to change it. So I think the fact of the matter is this: we have to deal honestly with that truth, that until people feel what they have become to other people, whether that's through sorrow, whether that's through accountability, whether that's through re-education, until they deal with and feel it, then they won't change. I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't know if it can happen. I ain't going to be mad at the way it happened. Burn down some buildings. Get rid of their stuff. They care more about their property than they do about us. Like, if that's the way you need to express that, express it. Be mindful of it. Don't try and hurt another human being. But do what you got to do to make sure your voice heard. That's my logic. And I think rage is a good thing and something that needs to be redefined, reoriented, taken back away from white rage, as Carol Anderson suggests in her book. If you don't got that book, White Rage, read it. It's an amazing book. And what she suggests as an antidote to white rage is incredible and brilliant. Like, we need to redefine rage and anger and put it to good use to change this world, to protect us, and to have other emotions that protect us from what happens when rage becomes uncontrollable and unconsolable. So, that's the best I got.
Brother Dante.
Who am I looking at?
Or should I say, Reverend Stewart.
And
I'm great. I'm not going to be here tomorrow morning, so I'm glad we got into some preaching tonight. I appreciate your words of wisdom, and I appreciate your vulnerability with us and sharing about all your story and sharing about your therapy. And I know therapy saved my ministry life and saved my marriage and saved my life, basically. And I work with a lot of pastors around the country, black and white and immigrant. And one thing I've noticed is, like, pastors are not good at caring for themselves.
Oh, man.
They're not good at caring for themselves. And you mentioned, I heard in your words right towards the end, you talked about rest. Mm-hmm. You mentioned rest, and then you mentioned like rest for the resistance. Mm-hmm. And just wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about how you're caring for yourself and how you rest and Sabbath so that you're ready to do the work.
Oh, 100%. Brilliant question. Thank you so much. I have been reading, once again, the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel's book, Sabbath. It's an incredible book. He says this. He writes this line. I love this line. He says, Judaism is a religion of time, I think. He says something like that. That he wants that Judaism is about, a proper relation to time and making time holy. I just love that idea that he called it like holy time or something like that. And for me, I have been trying to relate to time better. As a young person, I'm 30 years old. As a young person, it's very hard for me not to believe I'm running out of time. Even as a youngin'. I'm 30. I'm like, dang, bro, some days I can't even imagine making it 60 or 70 or 80. It's just based on the life that I've lived. It's like, dang, bro, like you're on the clock, and things like that. So one of the things that I've been trying to do to take care of myself is reorienting my relationships with time. Think about insecurity, right? Insecurity is oftentimes, living, it's like time travel. It's like living in a future that doesn't exist. Living in a past that you feel like you can't escape. That's like trauma. Trauma is locked in the psyche, in the subconscious. So it's like there's a past, that you feel you cannot escape. So you constantly relive it again and again and again. And then when you want better for yourself, you oftentimes live into the future. So for me, what I'm trying to do to take care of myself is I'm trying to be present as best I can with myself and with other people. Another thing I'm trying to do that I do is I try and do one good thing for myself a day. Last night, that was my brother and sister. It's kind of funny, my sister's a basketball head. She was amazing in basketball in high school or whatnot. She said there's this great kid playing at the school at Fort Mill High School. So I was like, oh, I'm traveling to Charlotte, so let's get together and go. And I'll come down, I'll drive down to school. We get to the school, we go to the basketball game, and actually she realized that the kid plays on another team. So we're here at Fort Mill versus Blythewood High, not looking at anybody we actually know, but at the basketball game together. And then I told them, I was like, yo, this game boring. Let's go to Dave & Buster's. So I took them to Dave & Buster's. So we went to Dave & Buster's and we played arcade. And that's what I've been doing is I've been, one thing to do for myself a day. So when I write, I get up in the morning real early and I work and I write and then I play Fortnite, so I play some video games to kind of because I have to force myself to stop thinking. Because for me, I was talking with my therapist and he was like, yo, you've been forced to live life on autopilot. So you have to really work at being present. There are times where I'm driving and I don't know how I got from point A to point B because I'm so in my head. And I was in New York not too long ago, and I was coming out of this building, heading to Middle Church to go see my friend Reverend Dr. Jackie. And I came out of this coffee shop, and at the side of the building, there was these words written. Well, really, they were when people got them letters that you can peel off, they're like stickers. Somebody had a sticker letters, and it read, "You're living so much in your head that you can't enjoy where you are." And I knew that was for me, and that was for everybody who passed that. I was telling my therapist that I don't think that there's ever been a time in my life where I wasn't consciously proving why I exist. From a young kid to 30, even right now, a part of me always I gotta write, my next book gotta be the best book that I can write. I gotta write all these right now. I gotta do this, I gotta do that. I gotta write this essay, I gotta do this. I gotta do that, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. Trying to plan. And all that stuff is good because where I come from, y'all, I come from rural South Carolina. I come from the gutter in the country. There was a documentary entitled Corridor of Shame. That's what they call the area I come from, the Corridor of Shame in South Carolina. You know, right. That Corridor of Shame. And, you know, that does something to children. You know, it does something to us. And sometimes bad, sometimes good. And for me, like, I'm in a position right now in life where, like, I'm able to give the younger version of myself everything I felt was robbed of me. But then I also have to be mindful that what the younger version of myself doesn't need is me harming the present version of myself when he arrives back there. And so, like, it's very easy for me to harm myself by not being good to myself. My homie, Morgan Jerkins, amazing writer. If you ain't got her books, get everything you can by Morgan Jerkins. She just wrote this piece on panic attacks that was very beautiful. And she just was like, yo, there were so many wins that I had in my 20s. And we're both 30. She was like, yo, there were so many big wins that I had in my 20s that I didn't even enjoy because I didn't give myself time to enjoy it. And so, like, right now, what I'm planning on doing this year is like I want to enjoy my wins because God has given me some really good wins. I want to enjoy them, and I want my children to enjoy them. I want my wife to enjoy them. I want my family back home to enjoy them. You know, so I want to do everything I possibly can to live in the present moment and enjoy the life I live because it's a beautiful life. And that's true of every one of us. We need to slow down and enjoy that life that we live because it's a beautiful life. Yeah. All right, one more. Let's get one more because shoot one more after her. Yeah. Dr. Marty, great to see you.
Dante, you and I haven't talked about this.
Okay.
There's a world that thinks about James Baldwin. There's a world that thinks about the gospel. Yeah. I think you believe that James Baldwin lives, speaks the gospel, and that the gospel is manifested through James Baldwin.
Oh, 100%.
Could you talk a little bit about James Baldwin and the gospel?
Whew. Okay. I'm going to save y'all some time on this question. I ain't gonna lie. I'm gonna save you some time on this question for real, because I actually wrote for CNN about this. It's called James Baldwin's Easter Sermon. You can look it up. It's called James Baldwin. Just type in James Baldwin and sermon, and it'll be the first thing to come up online. I think, or one of the first things. But I'll speak very quickly to that. Baldwin. So the gospel according to James Baldwin. Like Baldwin, for so many people believe that when Baldwin left the church, that like Baldwin was actually leaving religion, or Baldwin was actually leaving Christianity. But Baldwin might have left the church, but the church did not leave Baldwin. I actually wrote my thesis on James Baldwin. It was entitled "What We Did Was Not Supposed to Happen," which came from a line in an interview between him and Nikki Giovanni, the great, amazing, still living to this day, poet, beautiful, beautiful soul, Nikki Giovanni. They had a talk, and they started talking about like them going, like Nikki Giovanni going to a revival service, and then Baldwin was like, "Listen, baby, what we did with that cat Jesus was not supposed to happen," you know. And he was talking about like what black folk did with Jesus. There was also the conversation after the bombing in Birmingham, where Baldwin and the great late moral ethicist Reinhold Niebuhr, they sat down for a conversation, and James Baldwin, looking upon and literally behind them, was the blown out face of the mural of Jesus Christ. And Baldwin suggests that maybe it's time for us to give Christ a new face. And so he's suggesting that there is a part of the faith that needs to be deconstructed. There is a part of this faith that needs to be dismantled. There's a part of this faith that must be reimagined and reinterpreted. And when you read the literature of James Baldwin, as I've tried to do as best I can, and I lean heavily on Dr. Joseph Surratt's work, who's a professor at Columbia, and others to read James Baldwin, like M. Sean Copeland or other Baldwin scholars, Dr. Dwight McBride, or the names are escaping me right now. I wrote the thesis back last year, so it's kind of escaping me. But one of the things that Baldwin did is he embodied what I call the black sacred imagination, that he took the metaphors, the stories, the images of the church, of the Bible, of the faith, of songs, and he reinterpreted and reimagined them and created out of them a more liberating way to embody our faith. One that, as he suggests, you know, even though he left his father's house, I'm far removed from my father's house, he says, but I've never forgot the idea of love mercy, love justice, and do good to other people and walk in the way of Jesus. And he says, as he talked to Mavis, I think it was Mavis on 4. Mavis was a great interviewer. And he said, you know, that I take my cue from Jesus. So in Baldwin's mouth, there's an affinity with Christianity that he remained and still had. But there was also the Baldwin who would suggest that, you know, if the religion of Jesus, you know, is to be loving, to make us larger, more freer, you know, if the concept of God is to be of any validity or any use, it can only be to make us larger, more freer, and more loving. And if it cannot, then we had better get rid of it. And so for Baldwin, there is a part of getting rid of God that suggests that the concepts of God that we have are inherited, and they also can be reimagined. And that's kind of what I would say about the gospel according to James Baldwin. You should read that piece. It was a really good, short, like real quick piece that actually I wrote that piece based on a section of my thesis. So it was kind of me kind of doing that, trying to take my academic work and turn it to publication work. So, yeah.
Yes, Dante or Reverend Stewart. My question to you is, what would you say about black on black crime, especially during this time? You know, not only with Tyree, you know, and the officers being black, but, you know, in our communities that are having issues or whatever, and blacks are killing blacks. But how would you talk about that?
Yeah, that's a hard one for me. I'm not gonna lie. You know, I personally, because I get it. I think for a certain generation, the language of black on black crime is not problematic. But for other generations, I think that language is problematic for other generations. I want to live in that tension. I just want to say, I think as black people, we need to be better to one another. We need to love one another. We need to be kind and patient with one another. You know, we are all of those things. And I think that's the thing that black on black crime does as a moniker, as a thing, as a phrase. What it does is it robs us of the many ways black people are already loving one another and taking care of one another and being good to one another. And oftentimes what we actually mean by black on black crime is the ways in which black people are trying to cry out for better, and the closest person to them they harm because they haven't been heard. That's any community. And so for me, as a person, as a human being, I just don't deal with black on black crime because I don't like that language. But I do deal with us as black people, as Kiese Layman would suggest, to responsibly love one another. So the antidote to any type of violence or hatred for any demographic is responsible love. So, yeah. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause for Dante and Stewart.
Appreciate it. And I need to run to the bathroom.
You can come back and hear Dante tomorrow. He'll be with us for worship, and he's going to sign some books out here. He needs to give him a minute to bio break, and he'll meet us out here in the foyer. And if you want to have a book signed, that'd be great. So we can do that. Thank you so much for being here with us this weekend, for leaning in, for learning. Take some space and some time to let the dust settle and see where it goes in your life. And stay connected with us. and what we're doing as an organization and as a church, and we hope that you'll continue to walk with us on this journey of collective liberation. Thank you for being here. Have a great night.